So it's a miserable rainy day today, and it seems appropriate considering the subject matter of today's video. We have had a lot of death of animals, not people, thank goodness, but we have had a lot of death around our lives in the past few weeks. And I thought this would be a good time to address how my philosophy affects the way the kids and I talk about death. So just like everything, you need to keep in mind how children learn. They watch and they rehearse. Across the board, everything that children do, they're watching and they're rehearsing. So death is no different. They're watching the adults around them to see how you're supposed to handle it, and then they practice. And in that practice, they develop neural pathways so that as those situations arise later on in their lives, they have those existing well-worn neural pathways that they can use, that they can rely on. So when they're children, it's very important that you guide the development of those neural pathways in a way that will prepare them for life. Whereas often our tendency, especially when it comes to death, is to try to avoid the subject altogether in order to protect them in some way. But that means that you have no influence on how the neural pathways are being developed. Whereas to me, making sure that they develop neural pathways that allow them to process the big difficult emotions that come with things like death, to me, helping them develop those neural pathways in a healthy way is the most important thing that I can possibly do. So it's actually been quite good that we have had so many opportunities to practice developing those neural pathways in sort of low intensity situations as opposed to high intensity situations like the death of a loved one, which inevitably will happen eventually. It's not something that you can shield them from. So that's really my approach. When we were in Uganda, a dear sweet dog died. Her name was Tinky, and they held a memorial service. And it was an opportunity for the girls to learn about the solemnity of an occasion when someone loved passes away. But of course, when there is such an emotionally charged occasion, Bethany's anxiety and her ADHD cause her to lose her impulse control. So she behaves in extraordinarily inappropriate ways. So she really had a hard time with being calm and being quiet and being respectful. She became very impulsive, which reads as rude. So I'm very glad that we have had a few opportunities to practice so that she can develop the neural pathways for how to behave in such a situation, so that in the future, her anxiety will have a harder time sort of railroading her behavior the way that it did at Tinky's funeral. So when the cat murdered a couple of moles, the girls held their own funeral service for the moles and buried them and decorated their graves. And then when we had a chipmunk, where did we get the chipmunk?
Caleb was chewing on it.
Yeah, Caleb was chewing on it.
Mom, it's probably the same baby chipmunk that was...
Yeah, it was probably in the garage the whole time.
See that move.
Yeah. Do you think it's going to live?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. What did Caleb do to it?
Chewed off its tail?
Yeah, chewed off its tail. That sadly and inevitably passed away. The girls held a memorial service and were able to practice the solemnity and the seriousness and the respect and the honoring that comes with a burial. And when the baby chicken passed away, once again, the girls created a grave for the baby chicken and said goodbye to it. Yeah. In a respectful way. Making a cemetery? We don't shy away from death. It's a part of life. And I see it as my job to help them develop their coping techniques and solidify their coping techniques now while they're young, so that as they grow and these situations arise, it won't give them so much anxiety and they'll know what to do. Now, there was a different type of death on our little farm this week. We had to butcher our rooster, Primo, because he was getting violent. And it was really interesting to see the girls' reactions because, on the one hand, Primo kind of made their lives miserable. He really did torment them. But on the other hand, we also kind of grew to love him. Okay, so this one here is Prima. Yeah. Prima was born first. So while sometimes the girls celebrated with glee his impending death, at other times Abby was near tears talking about having to kill Primo. But I don't shy away from it because this is part of life. This is something that you cannot avoid. Sooner or later, things that you care about will die. I also don't shy away from the fact that this is where our food comes from. And I know a lot of people think it's a bit perverse to befriend your food. But I think there's a really big problem in our society right now with sort of the careless disregard for food that most people have, because they don't realize that a life was sacrificed to give you this meal. And so food gets wasted a lot because people don't value it the way people used to value it when they had a more direct relationship to their food. So to me, it's very important that my children are raised being aware that a living creature has to die in order for you to eat. So we took Primo to a friend's house to be butchered because they have birds for the first time this year. And so we made a little learning opportunity. It was a learning opportunity for the adults to learn how to butcher. And it was also a learning opportunity for the children to check out the biology of the rooster. So we saw the lungs. We measured how long the intestines were. Everyone held the heart and checked out the 4 chambers of the heart. The children found it very fascinating. And I know for some people this seems strange, but the way that I educate my children is to really embrace the complexity of life. Things aren't just simple, cut and dry. You know, you can love a rooster and also hate a rooster. You can kill a rooster and you can learn about his biology. And you can do all of these things respectfully. And he can provide you food. So to me, it's about taking advantage of every opportunity that we could get from that bird, I suppose, if that makes sense to you. And for sure, maybe when my children are grown up, they'll tell me that I was wrong. It's entirely possible. But I don't see the point in pretending that life is anything other than what it is. because you have a whole world full of adults who were never taught the whole complicated truth. And they walk around with these opinions that are uninformed and incomplete. And my goal is to raise my children with as much information as possible so that they can make their own choices about what they want to do. So possibly experiencing this, my children will decide that meat isn't worth it, and they don't want to eat meat if it means that someone has to die. Or maybe they'll be like me, where they'll think that it's okay to eat meat as long as the animal has been given a good, full life and be treated with the respect and the dignity in life and in death that is deserved, considering that it is providing me with necessary sustenance. So it's complicated.
We may have it all, up the ladder, down the wall, different mysteries, full life mixed with tears. We are happy most of the time, and we get along better than fine. Left and right we braid, through the ups and downs we sway. It's easy either way.
In the end, what I really want is for my children to know the complexity of life, that the beauty of birth and of death, of happiness and sadness, of fear and love. The human experience is an emotional roller coaster, and without the lows, you don't have the highs. And I don't feel the need to shelter my children from that. There will always be loss. Things will come into your life, not just animals, but people, they'll come into your life. And you might fall greatly in love with them. You might grow very attached to them. But in the end, nothing lasts forever. And so I want to help my children develop the coping skills that they need now, while I have the influence on them that I do, so I can help them develop healthy coping skills, so that when they grow older, they will be able to deal with difficult things in a way that's healthy. Anyways, that's my thoughts on this cold and rainy day. Thanks for hanging out with us. Take care.